Some reflections on how Kant prepares the way or acts as a doorway or a gate for Heidegger to sort of stand at and then make his entree, or as it were, to claim the entree, to be to philosophize. So I didn't realize how long Kant had contemplated the question, which just appears quite as though it were a short logical statement about the copula, about is being the copula in a sentence. But he'd been thinking about this ever since his student days, because Christian Wolff was such a big authority at that time, the theologian, and Wolff had made this simple statement. I mean, this is one of the multiple paths to get to it, but which is required to come together in a storm of concomitant determinations for Kant's thinking, of course, including Descartes. That Wolff had defined existence by a reference to possibility. So he said existence is something like how do you say it in what does Christ do to the laws? He fulfills them. So it's like the fulfilling of a possibility. Existence is the fulfilled form of possibility, which is, and then Kant says this is very, very vague, and we get it. What's strange is then we get the same thing in a transfigured way at the beginning of Hegel's logic, where he just so I always thought that this criticism was more of a Heideggerian criticism, saying, oh, look at Hegel, he just assumes being, and then he makes his alpha bone with nothingness, and then comes up with this synthesis of the transfigurator and a constant translation of the of things as historical becoming. But so I see now that Kant had been thinking about this for 30 years, something like that, before he came out with the Rein und Vernunft critique. So it's simple in its kind of totality of this problem with existence, and then so now let's try to see if Zizek sort of has a sense. It's obvious if he was talking about Kant, he does, but then let's try to see what Heidegger does. Well, let's stick to seeing what Kant does first. So then, this is the same space of Descartes, where Kant comes in and says, you need the cognito, or something direct rather than analysis of possible predications. You need to look at cognito directly, and that's why he asked about the conditions of any possible experience. So that actually wraps right directly on top of the so-called thinking substance in Descartes. And then you can see where Heidegger is repeating this all throughout his life, is this sentence of but Descartes has left even though Descartes was aware of the problem and even had very subtle remarks about how to understand that cognito ergo est is not to be understood as a therefore. It's not a matter of therefore, even though it sounds that way, and in some letter that Heidegger cites. But yeah, so Heidegger is always referring back to that this leaves the being of the subject unexamined, but then so that being means exactly, then we could say existence in this sense that Kant spends all these decades separating out and looking, thinking, but he does it early on, but then he keeps thinking about that. That which we have to examine, as it were, from the point of view of the cognito and not from the point of view of some kind of analysis of concepts or analysis of the predicates. We have always mentioned the example of Kant about the currency, but he gives all kinds of other examples. I mean, but it's actually limited. It's actually like unlimited, because it's just saying something about something is predication. So that this concept of existence is then the same as the Cartesian concept, but then it's dragged onto all kinds of other roads and divagations. But well, okay, I think that's some kind of orientation, but then we have to say, why is this transcendentalism? So transcendentalism is then a fixed attempt from within that field to try to raise up into a science or Wissenschaft. Whereas in a way Heidegger leaves free this situation to questioning, to thinking, and to other techniques. I think that's the way. And so in this sense, it's not a super transcendentalism, because it's not Kantian, except that Kant maybe is the one that's best separated out these problems of the ontic philosophy of the something as something from the pure Cartesianism, which, however, in a way Husserl was dealing with too. That's what Husserl says his starting point is, the supreme doubt, the total doubt, omnibus dubitandum. But then Heidegger says Husserl has brought in this new apparatus of system by the treating nous as on metaphor or on analogy with the senses. That's a specific criticism Heidegger makes about Husserl, and also points out what Husserl is doing as a Wissenschaft, as a positive teaching, which raises up against this situation which Heidegger wants to always, in a way, stay with. So then that's how I've always instinctually understood what Heidegger is doing from the point of view of being in time, because that's why the teaching in being in time isn't like a systematic teaching so much as it's something thrown up over this situation of having to look at the existence rather than to be cast into this predication situation.